right, good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Day 4 of the challenge. Today's going to be sort of a review of yesterday because I threw a lot of information at you yesterday, especially if you're unfamiliar with, the anatomy and physiology of the respiratory system and or unfamiliar with contemplating ideas like the soul and the relationship with the soul to the breath and sort of this like devotional attitude that is a huge part of like the yogic and meditative mind, and from my personal experience, a really necessary sort of emotional state to learn to provoke the meditative experience. I haven't really shared yet in this challenge, but for the sake of everyone's clarity, meditation is a word that has two meanings. Meditation is simultaneously the process, and so that includes any range of techniques that you might learn over the course of your journey, whether it's breath work, whether it's focus techniques, whether it's this lineage or that lineage. But then all of these meditative styles collapse into meditation, which is the inexplicable and sort of indescribable experience of like oneness or connection that arises from said techniques. And so meditation is both a process and an experience. And for that reason, the gurus in their cryptic tongues might say meditation leads to meditation. And in that, the young student would be left confounded because it's sort of topsy-turvy. So just a quick refresher. The biology and physiology of your respiratory system. Very simply, you take air into your body, of course. But if you really know what's going on when you're taking the air in, if you understand the neurology of what's involved in breathing, which is, a lifetime worth of studying, the biology of what we are, the reality of how reality works, when you really take the time to wrap your head around it, seems to be enough evidence to sort of recognize life as miracle. And for that reason, if you ever read, books written by scientists and cosmologists, they eventually, towards the end of their career, start to tiptoe into like this God realm. They start to speak of the natural world as philosophers speak of the mind and as mystics speak of reality, because the natural world, when we look a little bit deeper, is just as magical, just as mysterious as any concept that the human mind can concoct. So think about it. You have hairs in your nose that are designed to catch things for you. You have a mucus lining in your nose designed to like create a chemical that opens your blood vessels, miles and miles and miles of blood vessels, so that you can breathe better, so you can live life more effectively. Your trachea, your larynx, your pharynx, you have little bulbs, little balloons inside your lungs that expand, and the more you can inhale, these like sort of webs of balloons sort of separate, and in that the surface area inside your lungs increases exponentially, so you can take in more of the nutrients that exist in the atmosphere so that you can continue life. And a yogi would say all of this biology, these billions and billions of years of evolution from whatever started reality to now is here to support you to burn out your karma, to burn off your spiritual debt, which is accrued over lifetimes. And whether you believe that or not, you've definitely created some emotional debt, some psychological debt, and more than likely some real debt in your, in the handful of decades that you've existed. And so, yogis and meditators really reframe their relationship to reality, reframe the roles the individual has and reality has to promote this idea of growth and evolution. And so the whole world is working on your behalf, for your behalf, to help you burn off your debts and grow. So that's one thing, but that will take some serious time, some serious contemplation time. You might want to like read a book, you might want to like read a Wikipedia article, and once it sort of is threaded into your long-term memory, then it becomes accessible every time you breathe in and out. The Sanskrit term for this like study is called svadhyaya. The study of reality is the study of self. So, at some point, take the time to learn a little bit about it. Awesome. So what are we going to do today? Same process. I'm going to go over it just in case there was any confusion, but we're going to add a little bit more, and we're going to sort of expand upon our relationship with the internal retention, when you've inhaled, held your breath, and your lungs are full. And so today's session is going to be ultimately unguided. I'm not going to say anything until like the 20-minute mark, and then we'll coast into some mindfulness. But I want you to consider that the only intention is deeply physical. Don't worry about an epiphany. Don't worry about a mental shift. Don't worry about like creating like an emotional experience for yourself. Just worry about feeling your breath inside the shell of your muscles and bones and work to expand upon that breath. The big point with the inhale is you want to learn to breathe into your belly and breathe into the lowest section of the lungs. This is called the inferior lobe. Anatomically, everything that is sort of like at the bottom is the inferior, everything on top is the superior. And so you're trying to access the inferior lobes of the lung. The nerve receptors in this parts of the lungs activate this parasympathetic nervous system. So they literally activate the tranquility and peace response. And so it's good to know if you're ever stressed, you just need to breathe into your belly, not one time, not 2 times, 100 times, 500 times, and then the effect will sort of become obvious to you. And so you're going to inhale into the belly, right? And that's really you're inhaling into the inferior lobes of the lung, but the belly swells out. And then you're going to pause. And you don't have to be counting at this point. Take a second and just feel sort of the bloatedness and expansion in the belly and in the lower lobes of the lungs. Then you're going to inhale, and you'll feel the entire torso expand. Try to feel that the bottom portion of the rib cage, again, is more flexible than the upper portion of the rib cage. And this is just due to the tension and rigidity and length of the intercostal muscles in between the ribs. So second portion, you've inhaled into the entire torso. And the last little bit, just to sort of work the range of motion of these muscles, the traps, the muscles sort of like right behind the neck and the upper back, and the upper chest, try to breathe into the collarbone and throat. That's really forceful. You really have to work for it, but again, you're just working towards expansion. And so the inhale is divided into 3 sections. At that point, you're holding your breath, and this is what we're going to add today. The technique is called Udharra Bandha, Udharra, Udharra Bandha. And so the yogis thought that bandhas were locks that sort of allowed them to capture and funnel pranic energy, sort of cosmic energy, and direct it up into the skull so that they would have these sort of mystical, profound, epiphany-generating experiences. And so you're going to push the belly out. Imagine you just, had a huge meal. You had 2 huge meals, and you're working to distend the abdomen forward. You're working to push the diaphragm down into the stomach, kidneys, and intestines. And what you are physiologically doing is essentially stretching these internal muscles so that breathing deeper becomes more and more natural to you. So the inhale is divided into 3. Then you're going to hold your breath, and instead of just holding your breath, you're going to actively try to bloat your belly out. And that's it. At that point, you're counting again. So remember your baseline or find your baseline at the beginning of our session and then stay committed to that. Exhale for your baseline normally, no instruction, just feel, be mindful, hold your breath, and just count. Again, no real instruction, just feel, and then resume. Inhale, divide the inhale into 3, hold your breath, internal retention, push the belly out. You've started counting at this point. Exhale, count. And then hold your breath and count. One last little thing. I've had 2 questions. One was, is this dangerous? And it is not dangerous. Your capacity to hold your breath, you're more than likely, you're not even at like the starting line. The starting line of like, I'm really learning to hold my breath is when your chest starts to spontaneously seize because the automatic sort of function of the body is attempting to make the lungs inhale or exhale. And so you'll do something called chicken necking in like free diving culture. And it's something like you're holding your breath in. So if you haven't gotten to that involuntary response, you're not even close to like suffocation or danger. And even if you get to that point, free divers can chicken neck up to 100 times. And so people have looked into free diving because it's an extremely dangerous sport, and they were curious, as many of you might be curious, is this actually good for me? Is this dangerous? The value of it we'll get into later, but I just wanted to sort of like wipe out the danger argument. The only thing that seems to happen is a protein is released from the blood-brain barrier if you start to hold your breath in these really intense ways, which again, I don't think we are, unless you're chicken necking 30, 40, 50 times. But at that point, the blood-brain barrier becomes a bit weaker, a protein is released, and the research says that there's no serious consequence that comes from this sort of adjustment in the biology. So we can always look to free diving culture, sort of professional breath holders. They're way ahead of us in terms of holding the breath, and once they start to express like negative effects, then we can question Kumbhaka. But up until now, no. And we have an entire lineage of practitioners that also seem to be quite fine holding their breath intensely. So think about that, put the fear to rest. The interesting thing is, it is only uncommon, it is only unnatural, and it is only uncomfortable, but our brain and its intelligence does a lot, to make us scared. And this is a big part of this technique. We're trying to overcome the biology of fear. Cool, so with that, let's get going. We have a lot of time. I'm gonna chime in at the 20-minute mark. Just be patient. I'll talk you through the first round or two. But then it's just about expanding our lung capacity, getting into the lower lobes of the lungs, and yeah, working with this inhale. Alrighty, good work everyone. Happy to see you. Day 4, comfortable seated position. And let's just get into this seat real quick. Hips tilt forward. And so you feel your hip creasers, right? Right where the legs, the inner thighs, and the pelvis connect. You'll feel a little actioning, a little tightening in the hip flexors. And so you're pulling the hips forward. And from that, the spine naturally lengthens. The torso naturally organizes. So the key point is your posture is determined by your hips. The upper parts of your body are determined by the inferior or the lower parts of your body. Rest your wrists on your knees, straighten your arms, spread your fingers very, very wide until you feel the webbing of your hands start to stretch, almost sting. And just take a second right now and feel your fingertips. And so if you feel your fingertips, perfect. If you can't really feel anything substantial in your fingertips, just stay with it. Think about blood flowing through your skin. Think about air pressure touching the nerve receptors of your fingertips. Think about temperature touching the skin. And what you're practicing here is focus and sensitivity, the most fundamental skills of meditation. And so just a couple breaths, breathing slowly. Now bring a random finger to each thumb. And so this creates a positive feedback loop. It closes the circuit of nerve receptors in the fingers, and it makes it easier for you to recognize your fingertips, the mudra. And so in this 3-dimensional map of points, experiential points, the tip of your nose, your chest, your shoulders, your fingertips, touching the thumb should be more pronounced. And so the mudra technically enriches your capacity to boost focus and boost sensitivity. That's all. Now start to slow down your breath, breathe a bit deeper into the belly. Again, feel the inferior lobes of the lungs, the lower lobes of the lungs expanding. And as you breathe intuitively, savor the euphoria, the subtle euphoria, the pleasure, the satisfaction of breathing. Anything that gives us satisfaction, even if it's for a moment, gives us the gift of santosh. Santosh is a yogic virtue, contentment. And while for the unpracticed, contentment is usually short-lived, it exists for a matter of moments. As we stabilize our nervous systems, as we build our focus and sensitivity, and as we adopt, sort of these cosmic and expansive ideas that help us reframe our world, our capacity to stay content our relationship to Santosh expands. And so you just want to start feeling it now. Every breath is good. Every inhale is enriching. Every exhale is tranquilizing. Now start to count the length of your inhale and memorize this number. This is your baseline. And now that you have your baseline, move into the technique. A specialized kumbhaka. Divide the inhale into 3 segments and really feel that. Work to expand upon your lung capacity. Then hold your breath and push your belly out. Once you started holding your breath, that's when you use the baseline. Exhale normally, baseline. Hold your breath with nothing in your lungs, baseline. It's all physical today. I'll chime back in about 10 minutes. Good work. Add 1 or 2 counts to the top retention, the exhale, and the bottom retention. In regards to the inhale, just slow it down intuitively. Hold your breath for a bit longer. Take more time breathing into each of the 3 segments and feel your physiology. To feel more immediately concocts more focus, and you want to sense that. It immediately boosts presence. One more round. At the bottom exhale, the external exhale, or the external retention, I'm sorry. Hold your breath for as long as possible and see if you can get to the point of chicken necking, of gagging. And so all you're going to feel when you're holding your breath is CO2 build. You're going to feel acidity, a sense of fire, and a sense of tightening muscles. So let that heat build and let the muscles get tighter and tighter and tighter. After that, big breath in, breathe normally, and externalize the mind. Just listen to the space around you. Yogis believe the more prana we collect, which is really CO2, the more CO2 we collect, the more focused our minds are, which is true. We put ourselves into a panic state, and in that the sympathetic nervous system activates, the amygdala activates, the prefrontal cortex activates. And so the lens of our awareness focuses. And in that focus, we have a chance to see life more clearly. How can we prove this? Contemplate the miracle of existence, the miracle and mystery of atoms, the miracle and mystery of cells, the miracle and mystery of the intelligence that unites everything and encourages everything to work in an incomprehensible harmony. And for these closing minutes, as you're breathing, as you're listening to the world around you, appreciate your existence. I exist. I won't exist forever. I haven't always existed. I am a blip. But here I am. And more than that, I am conscious of it. Okay, everyone, bring your hands to heart center. Consider this is actually the peak of your practice. This is the summit. So boost your posture, tilt your hips forward again, lengthen the spine, and notice if it wilted a little bit. As always, test your sentience. You believe you are a conscious being, so prove it, and dial up your sincerity. Appreciate the world of emotions you have bubbling or boiling underneath the surface, the world of fears, the world of dreams, the world of desires, the world of regrets. The entire spectrum exists within you. And the yogis believed, because of this complexity they could sense, that every dimension, every little blip of the universe existed in some capacity within the human being. And for that reason, the human being alone can recognize the divine and in that connect to it through yoga. And so there's a lot going on, but here we are observing it objectively and appreciating it. Thumb knuckles to third eye center, again, symbolic gesture. An ancient high five. Just feel your thumbs touching your forehead. It is technical. It's not metaphorical. Just feel that. And focus so much on your thumbs touching your forehead that other parts of your body blur out. And what you should feel is that you can actually sort of do it. Not all the way, like a baby learning to walk, but it's intuitive. Take a couple breaths. Release your wrists to your knees, back to your mudras, end with a powerful posture. And with your next inhale, open your eyes and just repeat, I am no longer meditating. Keep your eyes still, looking into the space in front of you, not the object in front of you, and actually sense my state of mind has shifted.